This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes, e-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling, Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 11 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. Hey, everybody, I'm Hugh Brownstone for Three Blind Men and an Elephant, and I'll just cut to the chase. Holy sh**. I figured there was at least a chance the just announced $2,400 RX10 Mark V would exceed my expectations because I remember how taken I was by the last RX10, the Mark IV, which I reviewed 9 years ago at launch. I'll put a link somewhere up here or down in the description below. But here's what I did not expect. Take what I understand to be the very same stacked 20.1 megapixel 1-inch sensor and integrated non-interchangeable lens Zeiss Vario Sonar T-Star f2.4 to f4 24 to 600 millimeter full frame equivalent super zoom and pair it with Sony's very latest processor and dedicated AI chip, the one in their $6,500 A9 III. Put it all in a brand new dust and moisture resistant body unique to the Mark V with strong hints of A9 III and A12 in the grip especially, which I quite like. Upgrade the EVF to the company's 3.7 million dot, half-inch 0.78x magnification unit with twice the refresh rate, which I also quite like for this particular camera, although for me personally, I'd rather always have the 9.44 million dot, 0.64 inch, 1x magnification EVF that you find in the highest end Sony cameras like the A7R6. And throw in everything else, the bigger Z battery, the latest autofocus models and modes, active mode stabilization to complement the lens IS, auto framing 4K 120p cropped, S-Log, S&Q, up to 30 frames per second, blackout free with autofocus and auto exposure burst rates, creative looks, monitor and custom LUTs, digital multi-interface, hot shoe macro shooting, USB-C. You get the idea. Well, I never imagined it would deliver such stunningly better image quality, superior, ready for this, to our 61 megapixel full frame $7,500 Leica SL3 paired with Panasonic's $2,000 Lumix S100 to 500 f5 to 7.1. I you not. It was so shocking at our usual super telephoto make the big boys cry real-world test site, 1.03 miles as the crow flies across the East River to the Chrysler Building, that I didn't even bother comparing the two at the wide end, nor again at 3 miles as the crow flies to the Freedom Tower. Though I did shoot the Freedom Tower with the Sony alone, and jeez. And while I wasn't surprised, its autofocus was better than my SL3's, still very good, but the Sony's latest processor pushing just 1/3 of the megapixels? Once and done. Wow. Now, why did the RX10 Mark V outperform that 100 to 500 with 61 megapixels backing? It could be the marginally narrower field of view of the RX10 Mark V. No, definitely not. Could be how small, light, and comfortable the RX10 Mark V was in my hands versus how big and heavy the Lumix S100 V was on the SL3, not only in hand, but mounted on the Peak Design carbon fiber travel tripod I used with its lightweight and fairly spindly legs. I don't think so. I've done this too many times before. Could be that at f4 and its 600mm full-frame equivalent field of view, the Zeiss holds an almost 2-stop advantage over the Lumix, call it 1/4 the ISO at the same shutter speed, or a 4 times faster shutter speed at the same ISO, all else being equal. That holds a little more water for me. Of course, it could be some combination thereof, but you know what? Based on my experience with many other full-frame super telephotos, I think the Zeiss is simply optically superior to the 100 to 500. And the wild part is that I like the 100 to 500 at normal image sizes and viewing distances. But that's why we keep coming back to this scene. It does make the big boys cry. Now, to be fair to the SL3, the Lumix at $2,000 and 1.3 kilos represents just one set of super zoom trade-offs. Sigma alone offers half a dozen others, from the $1,000 1.14 kilo 100 to 400 f5 to 6.3, all the way up to the $6,600 4 kilo 300 to 600 millimeter f4, plus their brilliant $3,300 1.4 kilo 500 millimeter f5.6 prime. They would have much better demonstrated what the SL3 can do at the long end. Although, not one of them has an answer to the 24 millimeter full frame equivalent field of view at the wide. Look, I'm not going to tell you a 9-year-old 1-inch 20 megapixel sensor is remotely as good as a 4-year-old full frame 61 megapixel sensor, because it is not. It's not close. It doesn't have the dynamic range of a sensor like that. It doesn't have the high ISO noise performance. That's not close either. And while the long end of the RX10 Mark V is incredible, reason alone to buy one, it does not have the crop-ability of 61 full-frame megapixels at the wide end, and this matters for what we do. We capture most of our personal street work between 24 and 90, but also go as wide as 16 or 17 millimeters, where the RX10 Mark V can't play at all. There are other trade-offs. Well, I never found a mechanical shutter speed on the RX10 Mark V faster than 1/1000th of a second, but I don't know if that's telling you more about the camera or me. It only has a single card slot. At the price and the intended audience, big whoop. No full-size HDMI port. No 32-bit float onboard receiver. You can see I'm reaching here. How piggy do you really want to be? Although, okay, if the lens could keep up with it, I wish Sony had an answer to what is purported to be the OmniVision 37 megapixel 1-inch low-fix sensor of DJI's latest Osmo Pocket 4P in time to put it into the Mark V. I think I would have bought that RX10 on the spot. Some of us will raise the depth of field objection. You may point out that with a crop factor of 2.86 and a maximum aperture of f4 at the long end, the RX10 Mark V's shallowest depth of field at 600 millimeter equivalent is roughly full-frame f11, a 4-stop difference compared to a pro-grade full-frame 600 millimeter f4. True, as far as it goes. But A, the RX10 Mark V is more competitive with the Lumix 100 to 500 f5 to 7.1 for shallowest depth of field than one might think. And B, you might even argue it's competitive with the highest end full-frame 600mm f4 primes, we're talking about just for shallowest depth of field. And I tend to agree with you on both of those counts for most of us, most of the time anyway. That's because at 600 millimeter, background geometry, rather than aperture, is usually the dominant variable in subject separation. That dramatic look of a 600 millimeter f4? Most likely when the subject is close and the background is far away, tens or hundreds of feet behind the subject, common in birding, wildlife, and many field sports, where the difference between the RX10's 600 millimeter f11 equivalent and an actual full-frame 600 millimeter f4 is often simply much smaller than most of us expect. But then there are those pesky differences in size, weight, and price. Take Sony's own 14 grand, 3 kilo, 600 millimeter f4 prime. An extraordinary optic I've had the privilege of shooting at the very same spot. It's almost 3 times the weight of the entire RX10 Mark V, never mind the size, 6 times the price before dropping another 7 grand on, an A1 Mark II, and about 13 times the carry volume of the Zeiss lens alone. How about that Sigma 300 to 600 f4? Another extraordinary optic, although again, I've only had the privilege of having it in hand. It's ginormous. It tips the scales at a whopping 4 kilos. At $6,600, it's almost 3 times the cost of the RX10 Mark V, yet manages to cost less than half the Sony Prime. And it still needs a body. Like my SL3, but even more like the almost $7,000 recently announced Leica SL3P. And to truly match that Zeiss 24 to 600 full-frame equivalent, any of these kits really needs a second lens. Call it the latest Sony or Sigma 24 to 70 2.8, another $2,400 and 695 grams, or $1,300 and 735 grams respectively. Never mind that the 300 to 600 alone takes up, call it, 15 times the carry volume of the Zeiss. Spoiled for choice, as the Brits would say. Although, at 1.4 kilos and just $3,300, and only 3 or 4 times the carry volume of the Zeiss, I'd say Sigma 500 f5.6, please. That is a to-die-for lens. If, that is, I were willing to schlep any of these in the first place, which, after having the RX10 Mark V in hand and seeing the results, I would not be. Not unless I had an exceptionally precise need for it. And at least one Sherpa. Now, before I close this up, 3 counters from the larger format world that I will take seriously. 1. Put a highest quality full-frame 70 to 200 2.8 from Sigma or Sony on the SL3 or A7R5, A7R6, rack it out to 200 millimeters and crop into the equivalent of a 350 millimeter field of view. You'd have the same 20 megapixels as the RX10 Mark V, that is the count, an additional stop of light gathering with which to have the ISO or double the shutter speed and IBIS, and the difference in image quality between those 2 sensors would be dramatic. You'd have a low-light monster. 2. Mount Leica's 90 to 280 millimeter 2.8 to 4 Vario Elmarit, rack it out to the full 280, and crop to a 490 millimeter field of view. Same 20 megapixel count, image quality almost as good as the 70 to 200 2.8s. Save for shooting at half the shutter speed or twice the ISO. 3. The dark horse. This was so interesting to me when I tested it. Mount Leica's $1,700, 785 gram DG Vario Elmar 100 to 400 f4 to 6.3 on Panasonic's $1,900 25 megapixel micro four thirds Lumix GX9 Mark II, 685 grams with battery and cards, effectively a 200 to 800 f8 to f12.6. Also hand-holdable, not at all that much heavier, still much larger and about 3 times the price, and that combo will also beat the RX10 Mark V. Although, to be fair, you'd have to add, say, Leica's 12 to 35 millimeter DG Vario Elmarit to cover the wide end. Okay. I will wrap it up this way for now. I can't keep talking this quickly. The RX10 Mark V is the best and most satisfying super zoom camera I've ever had in hand. I suspect it's the best super zoom camera ever made. The new body is exciting and enticing. The lens does the business, and the rest of the upgrades are significant. Nothing, of which I'm aware anyway, can touch it for image quality, versatility, ease of carry, and value, most especially at the long end, taken as a whole. Once more with feeling in good light, which is why I'd have loved to see what a 37 megapixel 1-inch low-fix sensor could have done for this camera, and Sony has announced one. I think that's what it is. In good light, all things considered, especially schlepping and futzing, you know the drill. The RX10 Mark V is peerless, irrespective of format. Yes, the image quality of the full-frame setup would have been dramatically better and would have exceeded had I matched the SL3 not to a consumer zoom, but to a pro zoom or prime. But for the price and the size and the weight, it ought to be. We're talking about a kit 4 times the weight and 6 times the price, which would also require a second lens on top of that, as I've already discussed, that I haven't even added in the price, size, or weight for, just to match the RX10 5's versatility. That's crazy. The RX10 Mark V would be phenomenal for someone like me doing urban compression in the right light. Phenomenal as a travel camera. A wildlife enthusiast's camera in good light. A dad or mom's sports camera for photographing the kids outdoors. Maybe indoors if the lighting were Madison Square Garden level. All of which is to say, any way you cut it, the RX10 Mark V is a kick performer at a terrific price in an unbeatable envelope. For most of us, more actually than we'll ever need. And for those of us who do need that kind of reach, the RX10 Mark V is a legitimate alternative to larger format kits, as much as an order of magnitude bigger and more expensive. Like I said, holy. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. From custom domains to beautiful websites using their easily customizable templates that you can have up and running in minutes. E-commerce, email and email marketing, SEO, analytics, and scheduling. Squarespace does it all and has done it for us for the last 11 years. If you are a small to mid-sized business in any industry, Squarespace is the place to go for all of your website needs. Hop over to www.squarespace.com/Hugh for a free trial. And if you like what you see and want to move forward, receive 10% off your first order by using the discount code Hugh at checkout. Thanks, Squarespace. If you like what you've seen here today, please give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, join the conversation in the comments section below because this is an exceptional audience. If you'd like help with a portfolio review, gear selection, finding or honing your artistic voice, sign up for a one-on-one mentoring video called Via Zoom at 3bmep.com/booking. Finally, please consider supporting our work by using the no-cost You affiliate links down below, sending us coffee money via PayPal, or most especially, joining us on Patreon, links down below as well. However you choose to support us, as always, we thank you for it.